I think that the being a good lawyer thing has to go without saying. You need to be smart. You need to be up to date. You need to be constantly evolving and learning about the law.
Welcome to a special edition episode of the Game Changing Attorney Podcast featuring the premier Firm of the Year award winners announced at the 2024 CRISP Game Changers Summit, Nick Spetsas and Charles Buist, co-founders of Spetsas Buist.
You can have a good attorney that brings your firm in the quota for the month, but a great attorney is going to make sure that they left no stone unturned and maximizes their client's settlement value.
I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of CRISP, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. CRISP started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. I sat down with Nick and Charles to discuss how perseverance and resilience are crucial in overcoming business hurdles, how to identify and cultivate a culture of empathy, excellence, and evolution within your law firm, and how to leverage individual strengths and complementary skill sets to amplify a partnership.
My lane is marketing. I love presenting. I love talking to folks. We want to, get as many trials as we can. It's tough. We want to try cases together. But Nick is incredibly good at negotiating and just ripping people apart in depositions. We work well together, but there's a lot of things he's way better than me at.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. All right, Nick and Charles, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here, man.
Thanks for having us.
I'm excited to have you guys on. Congratulations again on winning that Firm of the Year back in November of last year. I want to get into a lot of things, and I want to obviously be mindful of your time because we've got a workshop going on downstairs. I don't want to keep you too long, but thank you guys for coming all the way from Orlando. And for those that are listening that may not be familiar with the firm, how did this whole thing come to be? I mean, essentially, how did you guys come together? Like, what was the origin story of the firm, if you will?
All right, so it goes all the way back to 2013. So it would have been the first orientation day of law school.
Yep.
I mean, we just hit it off immediately. We went to school for, a couple of years, year and a half, and we ended up living together in a 1-bedroom place for law school, right? So we got pretty close.
In a 1-bedroom?
Right? Yeah, a 1-bedroom place. It was the nicest place. It was right by the old campus.
2 beds, or did you guys sleep?
That's the details, right? So the living room was actually his bedroom, and the bedroom was mine. So there was a bit of separation there. Not a lot. You're still in a 1-bedroom spot, but we lived in a great place. You could walk across the block. You're at law school. Really convenient, but expensive. So we found a way to make it work. And obviously you get close living together like that. The dream of starting this firm started there. We were talking about it a lot.
Yeah, 2013. And then I guess after law school, I moved back down to Orlando, took a job there, defense firm. Charles did everything, worked for judges, and then you were out in Oregon, right?
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Yep.
And then
during COVID?
Yep. And then during COVID, September of 2021, Charles called me, and I guess his family, him and his wife, they were expecting their first child, and they were ready to make a move. And I remember Charles called me and said, it's either going to be Orlando with you or North Carolina, I believe, right? It was Boone, North Carolina you guys were looking at?
I think at the time, yep.
Yep. I said, oh, that's great. I said, I'm working for a multinational law firm, one of the biggest. I said, I can get you a job here easy. Obviously, you're like the most hireable person I know. So he interviewed with my boss, got an offer, and Charles said, before I jump into the defense side, what do you think about doing what we always talked about and starting our own firm? I was like, I mean, we're in Orlando. We got the biggest firms in the country there, some of the biggest plaintiffs firms. He said, take the weekend, think about it. If there's a barrier that we cannot overcome, then I'll jump in on the defense side with you and we'll revisit this down the road. And I took the weekend. I called him up on, I think it was Monday morning or even Sunday night, I think. I said, I thought about it. There's no barrier we can't overcome. Let's do it. And I put in my notice and Charles made it. How long was that trip that you took?
It was a long trip. It was a long trip in a Penske.
Yeah,
right?
I think it was like 30,000 some miles.
It was so much.
With the newborn?
So yeah. But you know what? One of the things we talked about was I said, look, we're going to do this. Like we always knew we were going to do this. We're both that type. We just kind of, we kind of set our minds to things. It's like, it's going to happen. So I said, look, it's going to be painful now. It's going to be painful 10 years from now. This is never going to be easy. The people we're going to have to become to grow a business is totally different than just being an employee, right? So we knew it was going to be hard. Figured might as well do it now, right?
Yeah.
So how was, I guess you guys jumped in together. What was that first year like? I mean, any challenges?
All of them, I would say, every challenge.
Yeah, we checked the box on every single challenge. I think starting with the phones, just getting phones in there was tough.
Yeah, I think phones took like a week to get rolling.
Oh, just getting them in, not getting them to ring.
Yeah, just getting the phones to go, man. Just getting those to work, and then getting them to ring is the next challenge.
Step.
That's right. Even the internet, I didn't even know they wired internet through ceilings, and they're
people next door wouldn't let us in. I mean, it just started with just like, this is going to be, and it's funny because he was just talking about the challenges, and before we started the business, we acknowledged the challenges. We had no idea what it was going to be like, and the pressures. My mentor before we started the firm said to me, look, once your kids get a little bit older, you're not going to start a firm. You better do it now. You just had a baby. And I look at the way, you know how it is. They're everything. You're willing to do whatever it takes just to make sure that they have stability and they have comfort and they're okay and they're taken care of. And knowing what I know now, I'm just so glad that we made that jump at that point, because I would have been way too protective of my kids to jump out and do this risk, to start a business and go through everything we went through. It was still challenging and terrifying at certain points, but I'm just so glad we did it when we did.
Yeah.
So I want to stay on this in that first year. I mean, was there anything that could have broke you, wiped you out? I mean, obviously once you got the phones in, of course.
Yeah.
But just from that dynamic, because I believe you guys went into this without a book of business, right? You were starting from ground zero. So, like, how long did it take until things started going?
We jumped in at a point when SEO was at a weird phase. And I look back on it, maybe people are going to call this the golden age of SEO. I had experience with that, and it worked, but it took time, right? And when you're waiting on the phone to ring, when you're trying to test out different marketing things, you're trying to test out a lot of direct response stuff. You don't have the money for brand awareness starting out. And you know how tough it is to build a brand. I mean, you've done it. It's an incredible brand, but I'm sure that you've experienced everything I've experienced and more. But there is an uncertainty. When you throw a certain number of dollars at one marketing avenue, you're really hoping that it's a boomerang that's coming back, but you don't know that. And you need the data to make good decisions. And it's ironic because you don't have the data until you spend the money that you don't have when you're starting a business. We started with a $40,000 line of credit. The guy that was hired at the bank had like an SBA loan lined up for us. And I pulled into town and we called and they were like, that guy no longer works for us. And we were just like, I can't believe we kept a positive attitude through that. But right in there is, there was Google local services ads happened, right? And so we threw some money at that. I'm not seeing people getting the same kind of results, anything close, but we were like one of the first in that. And we were able to get some really good cases that brought it in. That was sometime around June of 2022. So you got to figure there was a half a year there of just struggling through, just a lot of question marks, That first year and still, I mean, I'm at this workshop. I'm learning stuff from your folks. It's just like, man, you're constantly learning. But at some point you have enough money to where it's like, okay, and everything's cruising along, everything's smooth, you got some processes. But that first year, and I love your story. I love hearing about how everything was, and like you went out on this farm for this video shoot, and just kind of like, it's just so relatable, because anyone who's done this, anyone who's started a business, that first year it's terrifying. I mean, if you're going to be honest about it, I mean, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Sleepless nights, you got, I got a baby. It's terrifying, but once you set your mind to it, you got to follow through.
So what kept you guys going through that, through that period?
Hope, man. Blind hope.
Yeah, I think we were naive too a little bit, which
Thank
actually
God.
worked in our. We learned really quickly how little money $40,000 is.
Oh my God.
for a personal injury business.
Oh my God. And then we start, you start getting some hits. About the time we came to the Mercedes-Benz Crisp Summit, we started getting some hits, and we started seeing, okay, this is going to work. Leading up to that, you have these precious resources. You have no data. As you grow a business, you have more and more money and more data. I mean, it gets really easy to make decisions. But when you're just kind of diving in with very few precious dollars, how is this going to work? Sleepless nights, man, sleepless nights.
What was that point, or maybe it was, I don't know if it was a specific moment where you started to really build that confidence? Like, okay, I think we can do this. Was it a particular case, or even just any particular situation?
There was a case. I don't know how many details we can get into. This lady called us, and she was in another state. Just try not to be specific about any of it.
Of course.
And she'd been turned down by a lot of firms, and her son had died. And we listened to the circumstances of this, and other firms thought it was medical malpractice. We listened to her story, and we said, there's no way that's medical malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, all right, we'll take this case. All right, we're going to help you out. We were excited about it, but you just never know. And Nick waxed them at the hearing for the motion to dismiss, where they tried to say, hey, this is medical malpractice. Now, the significance of that is in Florida, if it is medical malpractice, mom gets funeral bill paid for. That's it. No pain and suffering. No money in the case. Like, see you later. It's called the free kill rule, is how it's described a lot of the times. So once you smoked them in that motion to dismiss hearing, they came back with some very serious money.
Yep. Still not enough at mediation. I remember I pushed them. I gave them 3 days after mediation to bring
real money.
Yeah.
Real
more
money.
than 6 figures.
Yeah.
They had a value at high 6 figures. I said, I'll give you 3 days or else we're going to try this case. And they came back 3 days. Actually, I think it was 2 days later with the amount of money that we asked for, significantly over how they had it valued.
That was a case we knew we knew everybody had turned this down, the folks that you would think can help you out. And once that case turned around, we helped out this mother of a veteran. I mean, it was the best feeling. I remember us kind of sitting around teary-eyed at the table when that was all said and done, and just being like, this is why we do what we do.
Yep.
I told you guys I get teared up about Aladdin, man. This is thinking about these times. That was where it was like, this is what we are meant to do.
Yep.
And we can do it. We knew we were meant to do it, but it was at that point where we were like, yes. Yep. And I think like the next day I called Chris, was like, hey, we're ready to join, man.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what happened next, but you answered it.
Yeah, like the next day.
Yeah.
I love it. It's fascinating. You picked a very challenging market to build a PI practice in. I mean, absolutely. I mean, how do you differentiate? How do you stand out? I mean, to your point, some of the largest firms in the country, not the planet, are in that particular market, and even around Florida. What do you do different?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing for us is staying client focused. Charles and I always had the idea, as when we jumped into this, that this is, yes, it's a legal service. Yes, we're helping people, but part of helping people, and I think what a lot of firms are missing out on, is it's a customer service business at the end of the day, or a client service business at the end of the day, and you really, really have to stay focused on that. If you don't, you're just another firm, and you're with a client's with a lawyer who is not touching base with them, letting them know, keeping them updated. For us, it's about the lawyers getting involved in the customer service. And I know it's a scary thing for attorneys because we have so many other things that we're dealing with, but at the end of the day, we're doing this for the clients. They're helping us grow. They're helping us succeed in our goals professionally. But most importantly, these are the worst times that these clients are going through, perhaps in their entire life. Hopefully, they'll never have to go through anything worse. And staying focused and realizing that you got to be there, especially hearing from an actual lawyer. We've tried to maintain that as much as possible, and I think we're doing a great job with that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I look back on it, I don't know what we were thinking going into the most competitive market. I knew that Florida has, more than 400,000 car accidents a year. I knew that there's a lot of great data for tourism. So my thinking was, someone comes to town. Yeah, there's a lot of billboard attorneys, but you come to town and you get hurt and you're not from here. Maybe you haven't been branded yet, right? So I was thinking SEO. Okay, if we can show up on some searches, there's going to be someone come down from Massachusetts or Iowa or God knows where. They're going to get hurt. They're tourists. Maybe they haven't been branded by the local guys. So all we need is just a tiny little bit of business. I know the people on Shark Tank, you hear Mark Cuban being like, please do not tell me we just need a small percentage of this market cap. I get it. I get how that sounds, but that ended up working because we got a lot of out-of-town folks starting out. And now as we build a brand, we get to know people, we're getting more folks. But I think another approach of ours was, we said, look, we're going to meet everybody in this town a bunch of times. And so we had a lunch scheduled every single day for probably 8 months. We had a night event probably 3 or 4 times a week. I mean, it was tough. I was missing a lot of time with the family.
Yep.
But we're going out, we're meeting everybody, we're shaking hands, we're making sure to get in front of everybody in town 4, 5, 6 times a week. And we started getting calls. People started saying, oh, it was funny because like the chiropractors and stuff that shift a lot of business to the big players would say, hey, my cousin got hurt. I need you to take care of him. Or my mom got hurt. I need you to take care of him. So they started recognizing like, all right, if one of my family members gets hurt, it might not help my business to try and send a lot to these guys and make the big players mad. But if someone close to me gets hurt, they started calling us. That was another big confidence builder for us. It was like, this is the right thing.
Absolutely. I think another aspect of that as well, starting in such a big market, is we knew that we always wanted to scale. Why not hit the biggest bowling pin down first? And then that kind of makes everything else a little bit easier rather than starting in a smaller area and then saying, oh, now we want to go to Orlando, or now we want to go to LA, or now we want to go to Vegas or Philadelphia, whatever it is.
That's right.
So go with the most competitive first, learn how to take over as much as we can in that market, dial everything in that market, and then everything else will be hopefully a lot easier, right?
Right.
I love it. Jump into the fire right away. So what's the composition of the firm look like now, just in terms of team size, that sort of thing?
We're still small. We got Nick, me, we got an associate attorney, we got an office manager, we have a remote attorney, and we just hired a legal assistant / receptionist. Hopefully going to hire another litigation attorney with a lot of experience. And then hopefully right after that, we have another one lined up. So the goal is to get a really good squad of attorneys. We're not really trying to build out the same strategy of tons and tons of legal assistants, because AI is kind of changing medical chronologies. Things like this can be done so much faster and with so much less error, a lot less typos, issues like that. Your folks have been kind of keeping us on that. The Lior Weinstein AI event was absolutely incredible, and that's where it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, all right, we got to make moves. Went home like the next day.
Yep.
Like, Nick, we got to try this. But I would see us really being focused on hiring good attorneys, and then we'll hire help as we need them. And I think a lot of folks kind of do it the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. But from what you guys have told us, it looks like the future is going to be kind of setting things up that way.
And I want to talk about your dynamic just between the two of you guys. It seems like you have almost like complementary skill sets. Nick runs the courtroom. Charles, you run the business. Is that accurate, or how would you guys describe it?
Yeah, I mean, Charles hops in on litigation. He's handled a bunch of cases as well. I know what I can do. I know what I'm good at, and I always say Charles takes off in the plane. He brings it up to 30,000 feet, and then the last 10 minutes, I bring it down and land it. I'm just the guy that lands the plane. But it's been such a blessing because we've developed from not only I would consider best friends, family, to now business partners as well, where I've learned so much from Charles and the business. And it's been a blessing to be able to kind of see that, which I would never have gotten had I stayed at another firm. So it's pretty accurate. We have complementary skill sets for sure. Charles gets in there on litigation. He's a beast in litigation too.
And Nick has great marketing ideas. I would say you put up a slide one time, Michael, that was talking about what's a CEO. And he's like, you're actually just a grinder, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of working toward getting in your lane. And I think my lane is marketing. I love presenting. I love talking to folks, get as many trials as we can. It's tough. We want to try cases together. But Nick is incredibly good at negotiating and just ripping people apart in depositions. You're just a master of just destroying folks in that and really going past where any other attorney that's worked with us in any sort of capacity, you're always able to take it past a point where people are comfortable, including me, where I'm like, hey man, maybe we need to cool it. But see, that's your strongest gift, at least that I've seen. And your complementary gift is marketing. And so it's kind of interesting that, I like marketing, I like presenting, I like talking to folks. And complementary would be, to talk a little bit more about the science of negotiation. So we work well together, but there's a lot of things he's way better than me at, right?
No, ditto.
So I'm curious on the converse. I mean, over the years, I'm sure there's been things you guys have disagreed on, right? How do you handle conflict?
Man, I'm glad you got some wood right here. We've never had an argument.
Seriously.
We've never had.
Nope.
I don't know. Even when we lived together in a 1-bedroom apartment, man, we just never. I was an only child raised by my dad alone. I was always envious of people who had brothers, and it just seriously, man. I mean, you became my brother in the system.
Same.
I don't know how that works, but we really do feel like family.
There's a level of trust that's just. It's like I know that. God forbid anything happened to me, I could trust Charles. It's different. Yeah. I have one younger brother, and everyone always says you guys are the closest brothers we've ever seen. It's just how we were raised, and Charles has the same exact. He's like my slightly older brother, is what I say. He's just a little bit older, but
4 years as I approach 40 is feeling less slight.
But it's the same kind of dynamic, truly that I have with my own brother, and I just 100,000,000% trust in Charles, and hopefully feels the same way. It's always the best interest of this firm, of our friendship, brotherhood, always.
Yeah, and you guys have been essentially to war and back together, so it's I think that builds a lot of just trust and confidence. What about just from a leadership standpoint, just over the past several years, what have been some of the biggest leadership lessons you guys have learned?
Still trying to overcome the emotion of just talking about everything we've been through. Man, yeah.
It's been, for me, we were kind of talking about it downstairs, just stepping into that leadership role. I think the hardest thing for me was, coming from a large firm, I had a paralegal and I had a legal assistant. That was my extent of leadership. It's more of a personal brand when you come from the defense side, insurance defense, because you're not so much marketing the firm, you're marketing yourself. So you get on a panel with an insurance company and they say, I really like working with Nick Spetsas from XYZ law firm. So you're really marketing yourself. There's not much leadership that you get when you're at a huge firm. But stepping into this role now was actually talking to some people downstairs, learning how to lead effectively with different types of people that you hire. And I was explaining to a couple of the other attorneys downstairs, thanks to Charles, we have been utilizing print and Colby scores for our new hires.
It's thanks to Michael. I mean,
And
I didn't know what Colby
you
Prem
guys,
was.
you guys brought that to us, made us do that, and then Charles implemented that within our firm. So every single person we hire, and we actually sit down and go through and say, okay, this is what you don't like, this is what you do like, and that's the hardest part, I think, for transitioning into a leadership role, is being effectively communicating to folks who. You read the print scores and you read what the little likes and dislikes or the triggers, and you're like, okay, this how I have been going through life for the last 34 years is not going to be effective for this person. Which sounds silly, but when you have a firm and you're hiring people from all different walks of life, even people. I mean, we've been fortunate to hire 2 people right off the bat that I worked with. One of them, and one of them was my brother's friend who went to law school. So I knew him in a personal capacity, but then becoming his boss, one of his bosses is, you gotta really, those Colby imprints are invaluable for learning how to effectively lead and manage, I would say. Because
we're really similar, but we're really different than the group, right? And just learning how to communicate with people. And just those things are so great because it lets you know that this person doesn't see everything the way you do, and what works for you doesn't work for them. And I think that's going to be a huge part as we grow our team and as we work to, build a culture. We were fortunate enough to have people that we knew they'd fit the culture before they ever got here. Everybody so far, we knew they were a culture fit.
Yeah.
But at some point, we're not going to know they're a culture fit, and we're going to have to kind of work them into it, inoculate them with the culture. Right?
Yeah, and I think those meetings that we have, because Charles and I talk about our Colby imprint scores to the team, and like, this is our triggers, so it brings a sense of vulnerability, I think, to employees as well. Like, okay, these guys like this, they don't like that. Whereas I think there's some businesses where the owners try to shield themselves and not show any of their triggers or vulnerabilities. Like, I'm the boss and you shut up. We're trying to avoid all that by using what you guys had brought to us, the Colby imprint.
Mm-hmm. And circling back to what Michael was talking about, like, it's funny, we both went to the individuality portion of leadership. I think understanding individuals and understanding how to lead an individual, if we can do that at scale, we can lead a team, right? So I think our focus always goes back to the individual. And I think we have to grow in the way we think about that over time, moving a team.
Absolutely.
Because we won't be able to focus on each person quite as much. But right now, we're just zeroed in on each individual, and we're just hoping we can...
Getting that core team dialed in, you can trust them, and then from there, expanding and growing.
Yep.
How would you describe the culture of the firm?
We've got some tenets, and excellence is obviously a major thing. You got to do your job well if you're a lawyer. But empathy, that's our second one, and that's really important because we need to be deploying empathy at every stage of this business to each other and to the people we're trying to help. And then evolution, always keeping an eye out for what's coming next, trying it. We don't have to order it, but we got to taste it. Anything that comes along, we have got to give it a shot because we don't want things to blow by us. So that's really what we're trying to focus on. Our mission is to build a lasting relationship with every person that we help, right? So we're very relationship focused. I think that the being a good lawyer thing has to go without saying. Like, you need to be smart, you need to be up to date, you need to be constantly evolving and learning about the law. But really what separates us as a business is how much we try to focus on the people.
Yeah. And I would say the one thing about us culture-wise is Charles and I tell everyone, every employee, you can have the life that you want if you dedicate your life to this firm. Like, we're not here to just make you, yes, you're an employee, but what do you vision in your life? We can make that happen if you go above and beyond for these clients. And that's something as simple as putting an associate into an office in a place that they want to live, and then they run that office and have a little team under them. Like, anything you want, we'll give to you, but you need to go above and beyond for these clients. So that's really our culture. We're fun, we laugh, we joke, but we know when it's serious. The only place where we don't show empathy is to the other side.
Yeah, none.
I will never, ever show empathy to the other side.
No.
I love it. Now, I know you guys have mentioned just hiring more attorneys, more litigators. What's your approach to that process? Because it seems like every firm we speak to, they say, like, if I could only find more great lawyers, right? It's like the scarcest resource out there. What's your approach? Like, how do you evaluate good versus great?
Nick's probably tired of me doing this, but every time we get uncomfortable and we're like, hey, things are hot, we got to hire somebody, like we can't work 16 hours a day. Like, we start working way more than we planned on. We start having the tack hours on at the end of the day, and we start getting exhausted. We're like, hey, we need some people. It's kind of just reading the signs. I think there's better ways to do that. I'm sure there's way better ways to do that. But usually when the heat gets turned up and we start going, okay, we've been fortunate enough to where we kind of had people in mind. We kind of been talking to them. Like, okay, so that can happen quick. Like, hey, we're exhausted. We got to hire somebody, and we got somebody over in the bullpen. Eventually, we're going to have to start forecasting that a little bit.
Yep.
But I'm going to let Nick speak to what makes a great attorney, because Nick is a great attorney.
Well, I would say for personal injury and wrongful death, PI, empathy towards the client is the biggest thing. I think, again, yes, anyone can go hire any law firm and $25,000 car crash and they get $25,000. But the client experience that you provide, the comfortability that you provide to your clients, and the reassurance that you're there next to them, fighting for them and not giving in to the other side, is all that really matters to me. Historically, on the defense side, I've seen everything from 9-figure settlements that I've been a part of to $10,000 car crashes that I was defending. And I've seen a lot of attorneys, number one, not provide their client with updates, most importantly, not reassuring their clients that they're fighting for them. It's more of, oh, I have to settle X amount of cases this month, or bring in X amount of money this month to get my bonus. And that's not how we work at our firm. It's, you got to be there. Again, no empathy towards the other side. I mean, I have the office cracking up sometimes because they'll hear me on the phone. And I'm like, well, it looks like your client's getting sued. Tell them to get personal counsel because we're never settling for policy limits now. Slam the phone down and everyone's laughing. But I think a great attorney is one who is unrelentless and doesn't have their best interest in mind, has their client's best interest in mind. And that's what I think separates good and great. I mean, you can have, again, a good attorney that brings your firm in the quota for the month, but a great attorney is going to make sure that they left no stone unturned and maximizes their client's settlement value or verdict.
How do you know that? Like, let's say you're interviewing someone, is there a way that you vet for that, or is there or do you just know them so well that you kind of know their background, their experience? Yeah.
So again, as Charles was saying, like, we've been fortunate now because the people that we've hired, I've had a past with them in some kind of way. So I know what kind of attorney they are. What I've seen historically, I can tell the difference between someone that's passionate about helping people and someone that's there just to get a paycheck. You can look at the attorney and know how when they talk about personal injury, wrongful death. And again, sometimes, for example, we hire sometimes from the defense side, but you can tell the passion that they have for the practice of law. And the other thing that I think we look at is how they, ask them about their family. You know what I mean? How do their relationships with friends and family and people that they meet. And that kind of shows you what kind of person they are. And I can help teach the law. I can teach you, anything in the law, but I can't teach passion. So it's really, and I'm sure, as we grow, we're going to run into people who are really good at acting their passion, but that's ultimately not what's going to grow this business. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people that actually live and breathe helping others.
Kind of that, like that killer instinct. You're looking for that, but you're also, at our firm, to fit the culture, there has to be this set of personal skills, social skills where you can the gift of gab. You got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to make them feel comfortable, because ultimately we're a lot like psychiatrists in a lot of ways. The law is kind of the given, but reducing your client's anxiety is a huge part of our job. right? And if you just don't like talking to people, you don't have people skills. I used to wait tables. I like people that have been, bartenders before, waited tables, been through a little bit of that.
Valet.
Yeah.
That's another thing is we do look, as Charles was saying, into the background. Like, what did you do before law school? And that'll kind of give you an idea, retail, restaurant business, waiter, waitress, valet.
Have you had to serve some folks, right? Because we're serving people. Ultimately, we got a lot of degrees and all that kind of great stuff. But ultimately, we are in service. We are serving that person. So if you've been in some of these jobs, especially the ones where you get humbled, right? If you've waited tables, man, you got to deal with some stuff, right? And you got to learn how to deal with all that kind of stuff to be really great at this job. And so I think we're looking for not only that killer instinct, get it done side of a person, but also that soft skills side, which is harder and harder to find, really.
The killer instinct, I think, plays itself out. Unfortunately, luckily, again, knock on wood, we haven't had to fire anyone for not having a killer instinct, but I think that kind of all plays itself out. But again, as Charles is saying, it's being able to talk to people and make them feel comfortable. And again, that I don't want people to ever question my loyalty to them, clients, friends, or family. Ultimately, you have a whole company like that, right?
That's right.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So I'm going to stay on this topic of passion. Nick, you probably knew we were going to go there, man. In 2018, you had the opportunity not once but twice to be on reality television. And so when I learned that you were on season 14 of The Bachelorette, and then they even brought you back, I think it was Bachelor in Paradise, season 5. If you could speak to that experience, and was there any lessons or insights that you took away that you apply today?
Oh, so honestly, I turned it down originally because I got signed up by my paralegal, and I got email. What the heck is going on here? And then ultimately, I was like, you know what? I'll go through the interview process because I'm interested. I'm interested to see what this whole process is about. I've never known anyone on reality TV before. And then I got to the last interview. They offered it to me for Bachelorette, and I ultimately turned it down. And then they were like, you should really reconsider. And I talked to some people like, you got to do it. You got to do it. So it was an experience. Let me put it that way. It was eye-opening on how TV works. I think that was the biggest eye-opening thing to me. I've never really been up to that point in any situation where you have 20 cameras in your face and you're trying to like talk to someone, but I enjoyed the experience. It was crazy though. Like the way that you have no TV, you have no newspapers, nothing, no phones, anything for months. So you have no idea what's going on in the outside world, and it really, that humbles you. Some people fold pretty hard under that when you take away everything that people are used to using. But for me, I had a blast. Because I just joked around the whole time. For me, it was funny. Like I made really good friends with a lot of the guys on the show. You get a lot less time with the women than you would think, or the Bachelorette than you'd think. I think I probably spent a total of maybe 16 minutes with her in 5 weeks. I mean, I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about, but I don't really care. So I think my NDA is over. I think it's expired. But no, it's eye-opening because you watch it and you watch the edits and you're like, whoa, wow, they're spending a lot of time. No, you're mostly hanging out with your buddies in the house. No gym, which was tough for me. So you're relying on push-ups and running in place. But I think what it did allowed me to see people in the industry, because you have some people like me who had never even watched an episode before in their entire life. And then you had people that guys on the show that watched every season. And I had no idea going into it what to expect, which was the dumbest thing I could have ever done. Next time. No, there's never going to be a next time.
But you came back.
Yeah, I did. And you kind of get enveloped in this culture, and they make it like, oh, you're going to be on the beach next time. And, it was, I wouldn't do it again, but I'm glad I did it. Let me put it that way. I made a lot of friends, a lot of great connections. I still talk to them today. And I think after when you come off the show, I think that's the best part of the whole thing, because it's like, oh, he got a club appearance and shit and wined and dined in a bunch of places and new cities, different cities. But I don't regret it, but I wouldn't do it again.
And Charles, what was Nick like when he got back? I mean, was he the same person, different being?
I just had this conversation. Who was trying to ask me about this? It was just a couple of days ago. I was having this exact conversation with somebody, and I was like, I knew Nick before, and I knew Nick after. It might have been our coach. I think it was.
Yeah.
I think we were talking to him about that. And I said, he's literally exactly the same. You showed up to a rose ceremony in a Hugo Boss tracksuit.
Yep.
I mean, that is just so Nick.
Yeah.
And no one's ever done that. No one ever will do that again.
No.
It's so funny because people talk about it, and I'm like, no, I'm telling you, like that's exactly how he is. Like it's funny because a lot of people, when they get in the limelight, they change, right? You were identical.
Yeah, that was the one thing that you would see people. You'd be having a conversation 1 second, and then the next second they're a completely different person. I'm Italian. I don't. You get what you get, and even going into the interviews, because it's a lengthy interview process to get on the show. I can't explain what the interview was like, but I just remember I was in a room with like 30 producers, and I had people bent over, like tears coming out of their eyes, because they were asking me like, what's your style? I'm like, tracksuits, man. I just love tracksuits. I was like, I've worn them to like the most expensive restaurants, and no one said a damn word to me when I walk in with that. And someone was like, yeah, they probably thought you were in the mafia or something. I'm like, well, whatever it is, it works. I just love a tracksuit, man. I don't know what to tell you. But I think the one thing that I learned about rewatching is the editing process. And I never understood the editing process. Like, you could be outside and like a squirrel could run by you and you just turn like that. And they use you turning like that to someone saying something, and you're like, wait, I wasn't reacting to that. I wasn't even there at the time. So that was the one thing that really was crazy, is the editing process.
Got it. And I know we gotta wrap things up so you guys get back downstairs. But I'm curious, just briefly, what now the firm is really been taking off. It sounds like revenue's been doubling year over year. Like, what impact has that had for you guys personally?
It feels good to win. Always feels good to win. But just in my situation with 2 little kids, just knowing that things are stable, things are smooth. I'm doing my job as a dad. Like, I'm not gonna cry on this podcast, but things are good. It's like getting those cold plunges you do, right? You get in a warm shower, it feels extra good, right?
Oh yeah.
We went through that rough time in the business, and then the winning part just feels that much better. It's like losing terribly to a team and then you come back and beat them, right? Always feels good. The contrast between where things were 3-4 years ago to where things are now, oh man, it's unreal.
And similarly, like, we don't take it for granted. I mean, as quick as, well, it was lengthy to get to where we're at, but quicker than a lot of businesses. But we know that you do a couple things wrong, it can all go away. So it's always looking forward, and how do we improve ourselves personally? And we've been reading a lot of self-help books.
That's right.
Independently. And then how do we improve, our employees' our employees' lives, and then most importantly, how do we improve our client experience? So while we do appreciate it, I don't think we ever really took a step back and we're like, oh, we can relax now. Like, it's always foot on the gas with Charles and I.
We just had that conversation. It's like, all right, now we can invest in Chris Voss's folks came here. We're excited because we're going to start investing in high-level negotiation training. We have been investing in high-level trial skills training. We're investing in growing this business. It's just being able to spend money on the education, that's always out of reach for a lot of folks. I mean, just being able to be in a position where we can now grow to be what we need to be to take the business to the next level, because the business follows us, right? We understand that. The more we develop ourselves, the better the business does.
So as we come to a close, I'll ask you guys each this question, or I guess I'll ask it once, you each can answer it. This being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, Charles, what does being a game changer mean to you?
I think being a game changer means being willing and open enough to see what's out there and to try it. You got to try things to know whether it works or not. And we tried a lot of things. A lot of things didn't work. A lot of things did work. So I think you got to be open and you got to be willing. You got to have the courage to take that step.
Yeah, I would kind of piggybacking off my last statement. I think being a game-changing attorney is never being complacent. Similarly, always looking ahead, always moving forward, and foot on the gas 100% of the time. And appreciating the wins, but not falling into a lull and complacency. For me, is being a game-changing attorney.
I'm going to give a huge thank you to Nick and Charles for taking the time to join us on the Game Changing Attorney podcast, and I want to congratulate them once again for winning the coveted Premier Firm of the Year award at the 2024 CRISP Game Changers Summit. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691, and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with Nick Spetsas and Charles Buist, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.